Dhun-Nun. The story of Prophet Yunus, also known as Jonah. Once upon a time, an incredible series of events unfolded. What happened was spectacular. When a fish had swallowed him, all hope for his life was gone. However, he came alive miraculously from the belly of a fish, and thus became known as Dhun-Nun, meaning the Lord of the Fish. His name was Yunus, and he was a prophet, a messenger of God. The mission of Prophet Yunus, and what happened to him and his people, is a story that has enthralled people ever since its occurrence, and will continue to do so for ages. It was around the year 750 BC. There lived a tribe of Assyrians in Nineveh city. Today, this area lies in Iraq. Most of these Assyrians were shameless, cruel, sinister, oppressors of the weak, and idolaters. In such a social situation, Prophet Yunus was born and raised. He was known as a noble, honorable, and respected man. Allah entrusted him with the responsibility of prophethood. As all prophets do, he invited his fellow citizens to the path of truth, conveyed the message of the oneness of God, and asked them to refrain from sins and evil deeds. But the people of Nineveh rejected the prophet's call, just as many nations in the past had rejected the calls of prophets and messengers sent to them. Prophet Yunus reminded them of the terrible wrath that was directed at Ad, Thamud, and the people of Nu, but his people would not listen. He spent a long time in Nineveh in pursuit of this mission, but only a handful of people believed. He left Nineveh in anger. Soon after he left, things started to darken in Nineveh. The sky began to change its color. It looked as if it was on fire. Red, in anger, eager to spit out the wrath of Allah. A deadly storm engulfed the town. The sight was so horrifying that it reminded the destruction of the people of Ad and Thamud, and now the very same destruction was upon their head. In such a moment of fear, regret, and awakening, men, women, and children gathered at the mountaintops. They beseeched Allah for His mercy and forgiveness. They prayed. It was a momentous hour, filled with sincere repentance and sprouting faith. The mountains echoed their prayers and pleas. Allah answered the invocation mercifully. He removed His wrath and showered His blessings upon them once again. As the skies cleared, the faith penetrated deeper into their hearts, and the people prayed for the return of Prophet Yunus, so that he could guide them to the right path. Meanwhile, quite unaware of the happenings in his native city, the Prophet Yunus had boarded a small, overloaded ship, in the company of other passengers. It began to sail in calm waters, with a good wind. However, this would not remain so for long. Like Nineveh, this part of the world too was about to face adversities, and the challenge here was not going to be any lesser. Rather, it was to be much more difficult. As night came, by the decree of Allah, the wind began to turn hostile. The mood of the sea also changed dramatically. Soon, a terrible storm ensued. The sea waves were going wild. They were rising like mountains and then plunging like valleys. The wild sea waves were tossing the overloaded ship like a toy. And the blow of the storm was trying to shatter it into pieces. In a desperate attempt, the captain ordered the crew to reduce the load. They threw all the baggage, but this didn't help enough. Was there anything that can be done to save it? Is it all going to sink? For an extremely troubled time in the sea like this, there was a strange superstitious belief in those times that such an extraordinary situation demands an extraordinary measure. And this is to sacrifice a person to save the lives of all others. As per the seamen's traditions, the distressed captain asked to make lots with the names of all of the people. Then, he declared gravely, the one whose name is drawn will be thrown into the sea. As declared, the lot was drawn. The name of Prophet Yunus came up. People were surprised and sad, because he was the most respected and the noblest man among them. No one wanted to sacrifice him. So, they decided to repeat the draw. Mysteriously, on the second draw, the name of Prophet Yunus came up, yet again. So, it was done for the third time. And, inexplicably, the name of Prophet Yunus came up, yet again. People were astonished. But, Prophet Yunus realized by now that his Lord, Allah, is causing this, because he had abandoned his mission without his Lord's decree or permission. He was entrusted with the responsibility of prophethood, with a mission to guide the people of Nineveh. But he gave it up without the consent of his Lord. With such realizations, he mentioned Allah's name and accepted the decision. With his acceptance, the matter was decided. He was to be thrown into the sea. The process of execution began. Standing for a moment at the edge of the ship, he looked at the furious sea. It was dark. There was no moon. The stars were hidden. He kept mentioning Allah's name. And, before he could be thrown, he jumped into the raging sea. Thus, such an astonishing turn of events concluded his time on the ship. In such a manner, on such a scary, stormy night, as frightful as it was. And yet, the peril of the night was not still over. The continuation of the catastrophe was to add yet another extraordinary occurrence. A giant fish lunged toward the prophet to scoop him. The massive creature swallowed him and shut its ivory teeth to lock the door of the prison, and dived into the bottom of the sea. Now, the prophet was enveloped by 3 layers of darkness. The darkness of the creature's stomach, the darkness of the bottom of the sea, and the darkness of the night. When his senses awakened, he found himself engulfed by sheer darkness. He imagined himself to be dead, and in the grave. Once his senses became more alert, he realized he is still alive. Imprisoned in the belly of a giant fish, and coated with stomach acid, yet miraculously alive. Overwhelmed with gratitude, his heart was moved by remembering Allah. During such a momentous time, he bowed for prayer, repentance, and dua. He bowed there, in a place where no one ever prostrated. In the dark and acidic belly of a fish, in the depth of the sea, he uttered sincerely, in the darkness, "There is no deity but you. Glory be to you. I was, indeed, wrong." He continued praying, repeating this invocation. The sea echoed with his prayers. What followed was a spectacular miracle. By the decree of Allah, the fish ejected him near a seashore. He was vulnerable to the sun, wind, and flies, because his body was inflamed with stomach acids. He was very ill. But Allah protected him and provided him with food and shade. Prophet Yunus gradually recovered. Then he was sent to guide people, and they believed. Verses of the Quran reveal that, except for the people of Prophet Yunus, never in human history has it happened that a town, with all its inhabitants, believed in their prophet. What a success! Yet how hopeless it had seemed initially. The incident shows that, no matter how hopeless the situation may appear, it is essential to have patience and continue. Because we do not control the result or its timing. God does. Often, big things may take time and effort. Keep patience.